Hello, everybody. Welcome to our UFC 248 post show. I am John Pollock. If it's a UFC post show, you know that means it's time for Phil Chertok to join us here for all of the post listeners out there. Phil, how are you?
I'm great, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. This is a bit of a cruel joke tonight because it's always a bit of a chore when you're talking about following the UFC on the East Coast, but on tonight, no less, it is daylight savings time. So we're about to lose another hour on top of this, Phil. So,
on top of a card that went long too.
This was it was a very long show. I mean, there's a lot to discuss from this card, but yes, if you sat down for the prelims at 7:00 p.m., you're talking 6.5 hours of UFC tonight.
Fantastic. I mean, the people can't say they didn't get their money's worth.
Is there one person out there that's saying, damn it, we didn't get the Emily Whitmire fight?
maybe some of those people booing at the end there. Maybe some of those people.
Well, this is certainly a card that, man, it had a lot of highs attached to it, but I think we should certainly start with the main event between Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero. This was one of the more bizarre main events that we're going to talk about, but off the top, Phil, how did you score this fight? Because I think that there is certainly an argument to be made that this was such a bizarre fight to score. I'm curious who you thought was going to have their arm raised at the end of these 25 minutes.
Well, those are two different questions, right?
Okay. Who did you score the fight for? Should be the first question that I'll stick to.
Okay, so I scored the fight 48-47 for Israel Adesanya, with him winning with Romero winning rounds 1 and 2.
I agree.
And then round 5 was the closest other round, but I still gave that to Israel.
I'm pretty close to you. I ended up going 5 for Romero, mainly because of the strikes that he landed, but I can certainly look at, what was, like, he landed, I thought, like, his cleanest strikes in succession came in the 5th, in like this 60-second burst that he had. That it felt like at times John Anik was the only one who was like acknowledging some of these strikes, but the leg kicks that Adesanya was piling up in 3, 4, and 5, I mean, those were pretty significant, and Romero was having a lot of problems with these leg kicks, and those did continue in the 5th. But yeah, this, to me, like, Adesanya, I thought he was extremely lucky he left with this championship tonight, because I did not see it as, any kind of guarantee when they went to the scorecards that this guy, I thought that there was a decent chance Yoel Romero could have won this title.
Yeah. I mean, the judges, I guess, sort of disagree because it was unanimous, but I mean, there were two of the round, like it was 48-47 on 2 of the cards. And I mean, certainly the first 2 rounds, there was so little action in general that they're kind of coin flips.
It was process of elimination that you had to give those rounds to Romero, just because, like, literally in the first round, there were 7 strikes combined between these two, and one of them was a significant overhand left by Romero. Like, you have to give him that round. Mm-hmm. And in the second, it was, to me, Romero landed that counter left, and then he charged at Adesanya, but these were 10 minutes where, unless you are someone that's going to give out 10-10 rounds. I mean, this was like Romero to me was the guy that you, especially the first, but I'd say the second as well. And I think Adesanya, the most definitive rounds to me were 3 and 4. I think those were absolutely clear cut for Adesanya that he won those rounds.
Yeah. The second round, I'm curious if I went back to it, how many leg strikes did maybe Israel start landing in that round?
Adesanya did land more in the second, but Romero did have that big counter shot right at the beginning of the round. What I would like to look at is that one flurry he had where he did back up Adesanya into the cage, and how much, if anything, was landed in that particular round, because we haven't seen the judges' scorecards yet, but the 49-46 card, you would have to imagine it was 2 through 5 that judge saw for Adesanya.
You'd have to imagine.
Well, I don't want to make any assumptions when it comes to scorecards here, but this was quite a bizarre fight. And then after the fact, we had Paulo Costa in the crowd, who looked to be getting subdued by security, as you had Walid Ismail right next to his side, who I so badly wanted to hear from on this broadcast. And then Yoel Romero channeling Dusty Rhodes out of 1985, like cutting the sermon about the people that had paid their money that wanted to see a fight. And to me, it was like both of these guys, I think it was Joe Rogan that said this, but it might have been Daniel Cormier chiming in as well. Like, neither of these guys, to me, could have complained after this, because they totally left some of these rounds just on the table for them to be interpreted either direction.
Yeah. They both fought in a highly tactical way, and they both gave away rounds. And so, yeah, if it had gone any way, if Yoel had been decided the winner, I wouldn't have been upset. And I don't think anybody really could have been. But it did seem like, even though, like, again, it goes back to this, we sort of talked about it last time with John Jones. Yes, on a round by round basis, it was like in dispute. But the real, like, story and momentum of the fight was Izzy kind of breaking him down and avoiding the shots for the most part, right? Like, he was never really in danger, and he was systematically, like, dismantling him for the majority of the minutes of the fight.
If this was Pride rules, there's no controversy tonight that Israel Adesanya won this fight. But as long as we're tied to the 10-point must system, like, this to me is like the 10-point must system. Like, a perfect spotlight on it is that you have to win a minimum of 3 5-minute periods. And this was broken down in such a way that those first two were very likely Romero's. And then it comes down, like, here is one where you can decipher who won the overall fight. But when you break it up, it's certainly debatable.
Here's my, because we need to talk more about the scoring system.
This will just be a monthly segment we do.
My thing with the scoring system, where I would like to see some type of improvement, is that round 1 or round X is scored the same as round Y, when potentially round X had significantly more effect, damage, control, grappling, than round Y does. So it's like, it's like an inning in baseball. You can score 24 runs in the first inning and no runs in the second inning, but you're still winning by 24 points,
And to be honest, like, that should be what this point system is designed to do. That round 1, if we have 10-10 as an option, it should be used. Or if you're telling me that by definition, round 1 constitutes a 10-9, there's no way that you can argue then that round 3 or 4, where Adesanya is chopping his leg off, is of equal value. So I agree with you. But we just have, it's like everything is a 10-9. And if someone is on the brink of death, that's when we start to decide, was that enough for a 10-8? I don't know. He still has his leg wasn't severed. So I gotta go 10-9. Like, that's pretty much the debate that we have.
There was no 10-8s in the Oliveira versus Griffin fight, right?
In the Oliveira Griffin fight,
there was definitely no 10-8s, right?
Oh, from the judges. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There was no 10-8.
But I mean, somebody was seriously damaged, in that. Anyway, I'm not saying that there should be. Anyway, off topic. Let's move on.
how about this? Did you enjoy the fight? Like, was were you at least like engaged? Like, I understood why.
I was engaged. I was 100% engaged the whole time. I get it why people are booing and they have booze and they paid a lot of money and they travel. It's Vegas. You pay a lot of money. It's not just the ticket price. But they got we'll talk about it, but they got a Hall of Fame fight. And, so anyway, but I was engaged. I thought I don't know if I can say I liked it, but I was intrigued by it. I was captivated by it. The tactics played out sort of how I thought, with a little bit, obviously less activity. I don't think anybody expected so little activity, but I was still caught up in it. I wouldn't recommend it to a friend.
It's not the kind of fight that, you would be recommending. I think in the moment, you're kind of like, I'm interested because like this, God knows what this is going to end up with. And Yoel Romero winning the middleweight title, especially had it been in this fashion after this fight, it just would have set this weight class into chaos. I mean, to me, that would have been the ultimate Yoel Romero way to win a championship, is based off of outstriking him 4-3 in the first round.
Well, that's how it looked like it was gonna go. I mean, I thought the first round was
I scored it for Romero. Like I didn't know how many people would agree with me, but I thought he won the fifth. So enough people disagreed though. So
I thought the first round was just so brilliant. How he came out in that little tank-like stance and he just pivoted in place. I'm like, okay, nothing happened for a minute of him doing that. I'm like, you just won that minute because everything is the opponent responding to you. So it's like you just, there was no effective striking. There was no effective grappling. So that's the control. You just won that minute and used no energy, which is your weakness, is using too much energy. So I thought the whole first round was brilliant. And, but he couldn't keep it up because Izzy, started to apply pressure. I think the fans just wished it was a little bit more pressure.
I just think for Romero, like obviously the game plan was conserve and then have that gas tank ready for 4 and 5. And even I think it was the leg kicks that really shut down that game plan, because if he comes out of the fifth round and he's got enough to just go hard for 5 minutes, I think Adesanya was there for the taking in the fifth, and Romero wins that round on 2 judges' cards. He's champion today. He wins it by split because one judge still would have had the fight for Adesanya, but that fifth round, if he wins it on 2 judges' cards, he's the champion.
Well, I definitely agree that the fifth was for the taking and he should have done more to go after it.
But Israel Adesanya, he retains the championship, and it looks like Paulo Costa will be next after that.
He had another fabulous ring entrance,
Yeah, what did you think of this entrance? This wasn't the Robert Whittaker one. This is more a subtle one, but still very outside the box for UFC entrances we get these days.
Yeah, I liked it. It wasn't over the top, but it was unique, and I think it's a better choice. You don't want, like last time, he was able to pull off that dance thing and he feels comfortable with that. So maybe it wasn't a big energy expenditure, but that was my concern with the dancing. It's just like too much of an energy thing. Here, he's like relaxed and, positive energy.
I thought he might come out wearing like a 40-pound suit of some sort and then not gas in the fifth.
Well, he had that plan, and then he decided, flower petals were not going to weigh 40 pounds. So
the fight that this card will be remembered by was Zhang Weili and Joanna Jedrzejczyk for the UFC strawweight title. I can easily say this was one of the greatest fights in UFC history. They went 5 rounds. Zhang Weili retaining by split decision. 2 judges scoring at 48-47 for her, 1 scoring it the other way for Jędrzejczyk, 48-47. I don't even know where to start recapping this fight. I scored the fight for Zhang Weili. I had her winning rounds 1, 2, and 4. But the story of this fight was that, so many of these rounds, like I did not know what the scores were going to be at the end of this. There was like the fifth was close, the fourth was close, the First round was fairly close as well. Jędrzejczyk, like, they were tied in the first round with 28 strikes apiece. They hit an ungodly amount of strikes. Joanna Jedrzejczyk's forehead, she was unrecognizable by the end of this fight. It was, I don't even know where to start with this fight, Phil. So I'll pass it over to you with your thoughts on an instant classic, and I will be floored if this is not fight of the year, if not, a candidate for fight of the decade.
Yeah, it was really tremendous. It was exhilarating throughout. You already gave it all the accolades that it deserves, and which is appropriate because it was on the night where they announced this year's Hall of Fame inductee fight. This one is, like, it instantly makes you think that it will inevitably be right there beside that Gustafsson versus Jones 1 contest. Yeah, it was tremendous. I also scored it for Zhang. I had her winning rounds 2, 4, and 5. Mm-hmm. With one being extremely close. I thought
they literally had the equal amount of strikes. And this was like, this fight, it was really, you could go either way here. I do see most scored it for Zhang. So maybe, like, she seemed to be the one that was landing, like, her strikes seemed to be having more damage that was displayed. And granted, the visual is probably going to sway you a bit more because Jędrzejczyk, by the third round, you could just see the hematoma forming. And by the end of this fight, it was just it was pretty out there in terms of just a visual. This was obviously is going to bring back memories of Mark Hominick.
Yeah, well, not only does that remind us of that event, but sort of the main event and that lackluster main event, because that was the co-main to I forget the UFC number. I'm horrible at remembering.
This was 129.
129. I was in attendance. I imagine you were in attendance as well.
You know what? Amazingly, I was not at that card.
What?
Yes. This was before we were credentialed at the Fight Network. So I ended up not going.
Everybody went. People who weren't even like UFC fans were at that event. It was like 60,000 or 50,000 or whatever it was, 40. I don't know. It was a lot of people. Anyway, so the event was amazing, much like tonight. That fight was an amazing 5-round war that was back and forth. Hominick almost took the title. It was crazy. And then the main event that everybody was so excited for, GSP, it was like he jabbed his way to a 5-round decision.
Where at the weigh-ins, when they interviewed George of what to expect the next night, his words to Joe Rogan were, "Don't blink."
Yeah, but
I hope no one blinked the next night. You would have missed the 25 minutes where George had to fight with one eye by the end of it.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, look, he like, no hate on him, but it just...
No, he did suffer like a bad eye injury in that fight, but yeah, it was hardly a great fight.
And I'm pretty sure he's used that "don't blink" line on several occasions prior to fights, so that wouldn't have been the first or last time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so instant classic, great fight.
Tremendous fight to go out of your way to see. Did you go to UFC 165, the Jones Gustafsson card?
No, I did not go to that one.
Okay, that one I was at. I was covering that one. Certainly there's going to be recency bias, but I will say, like an hour removed from that Jones Gustafsson fight and an hour removed from this one, I feel this was the better fight tonight.
Going into this event and while the event was progressing, I was thinking, this is incredible. When was the last time there was a bad UFC event, right? Like a really bad one. And it seems like the fights are getting better and more exciting. And I don't know if that's because of the matchmaking, or it's just the quality of the athlete, but,
it's pretty rare. Like sometime, every so often, once a year, maybe you'll get one of those fight night cards where it's just a slew of decisions and it's lower level talent, but it's pretty rare. At this point, you're getting it. And in terms of a pay-per-view that has left people like a card as a whole. Like there's bad fights, but a bad card, it's pretty few and far between. And I would say this is my leading contender for card of the year tonight.
Yeah, I mean, despite the main event, I mean, but you know, it's still early, John. Spring hasn't even hit.
Well, that's why I say like this. I cannot envision a fight topping the strawweight fight for fight of the year. But it's, I mean, you never know. It's March.
Hey, as Tony Ferguson and Khabib are hopefully going to go down, you know, that's you know, that fight just screams crazy. So we'll see.
So, this to me, this is going to be the fight these two women are forever remembered for. I think this will be, for their own health. I hope that they don't fight for a long time after this, especially Jędrzejczyk. I think that there's going to be that desire a year from now to start talking about these two having a rematch or something.
Oh,
but
yeah.
This will be, this is going to be the fight these two are forever linked to, in their careers. This will be the fight that goes into the Hall of Fame where like these will be the two women that are forever attached to this division. Like this will be marketed as like the greatest women's fight of all time, which I think almost like this, you don't even have to qualify it as like women's. Like this was just one of the greatest fights in MMA history.
I agree completely.
You can disagree too. You could be like, John, you're full of it.
Well, you are full of it.
Oh,
but so I agree with you on that. But yeah.
My clock just turned to 3 a.m. Everyone, we went from 1:58 a.m. Now it's 3:08 a.m. and that was in the span of 10 minutes.
Okay, so I can blame all incoherence on this time change.
This is how deep this card was. This feels like this was on a previous card, but this was on the same main card. Was Beneil Dariush and Drakkar Klose, who had what I had written down. I was like, man, this has got to be at least best round of the year, and this was not even round of the night. So the first round, which was not the round of the year, Dariush gets a takedown early, and then he gets onto the back of Klose, and Klose is standing. And Dariush just applies a body triangle and stays on his back. This was like a good, like pretty much 4 out of the 5 minutes of the round. And he's just constantly going for chokes, and Drakkar Klose is able to stave off the submission. The second round begins, and Drakkar Klose just comes out and he lands these power shots, and it looks like Dariush is going to be done. Dariush instinctively fights back, and we suddenly get Pat Barry and Czech Congo here, where Dariush rocks him and backs him up to the fence and just loads up on this overhand left and drops Drakkar Klose at a minute of the second round, and Beneil Dariush wins this. This second round, this was the most insane 60 seconds until the next fight.
Yeah, it was absolutely wild. Dariush looked in all sorts of trouble. And Klose just, got a little overcommitted. Dariush was, he mentioned, his legs were fatigued from the body triangle, in the first round. But the thing is, like, when, like, your limbs are fatigued, it's different than when you're like, your lungs are fatigued. You need blood to get circulated in them. And so he was still able to fire back. He was still with it in the fight. He was still cognizant. And so that's why he was able to fire back and get that KO. And, it was a lot of fun.
Neil Magny defeated Li Jingliang in a welterweight fight. They went 3 rounds. Neil Magny won by unanimous decision, and Neil Magny has not fought since November of 2018. So he returned here and won in a big way. Jingliang is a very, credible welterweight. He's won 3 fights coming into this one, but it was Magny who was just a superior fighter here. He was able to just mix up a lot of his strikes, a lot of knees to the body, got a series of takedowns throughout the fight. At one point, he went for a gotch-style pile driver that I know, Phil, you'd be familiar with the work of Minoru Suzuki. I'm sure you were just marveling at this potential pro wrestling move being utilized in a MMA fight in the second round.
See, now I know that Minoru Suzuki is a pro wrestler because you gave it away.
Pancrase legend, Minoru Suzuki.
Whoa. Pancrase. That's not just pro wrestling.
No, I know that. He's done fights.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Did he ever pull off a pile driver?
Not in a fight.
Got it.
In the third round, it was more Magny just with leg kicks. His jab was just lightning quick, especially in this last round. And Magny won on all three judges' scorecards, 30-27. And this was a strong return to form for Neil Magny, who after the fight called out Michael Chiesa.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Magny looked great behind his jab, mixed things up, was good, was strong in the grappling where Jingliang is typically pretty strong, and yeah, just completely controlled the fight. Looked great in returning, says he wants to stay active, and I like the Chiesa fight. I don't know if Chiesa would really want that fight because Chiesa's, really coming up in the division. And I think he's on the cusp if he takes a higher ranked guy. But Magny's been around a long time. He has so many wins in the division. I think it would be a good fight. So I wouldn't complain to see it.
Yeah. Michael Chiesa right now is ranked 7th. Neil Magny, cause he's been out for so long. I don't think, he may not have even been eligible for the rankings because he's not even listed here in the top 15.
Yeah.
Do you know who is ranked 15th in the welterweight division?
Diego Sanchez?
Conor McGregor.
What?
He is listed here as 15th in the welterweight division.
Where's Diego Sanchez?
Not in the top 15.
Okay.
No.
I'd put Diego ahead of Conor McGregor in the welterweight division. Where's Cowboy in the welterweight division?
Alex Oliveira?
No. Cerrone.
Well, he is not in the top 15.
What?
So, Donald Cerrone is not in the top 15.
Okay, whatever.
Well, I mean, he had been primarily fighting at lightweight, and then he lost to McGregor. So, I guess it's just weird to see McGregor ranked like 15th here. I mean, he should either maybe, I don't know. I don't try and break down these rankings, but nonetheless.
Okay.
Opening up the pay-per-view main card was the other Cowboy, Alex Oliveira and Max Griffin. And by the way, I did give a 10-8 in the second round to Neil Magny. So I did throw it on this particular fight. But Alex Oliveira, he won by split decision over Max Griffin. The key shot of the entire fight came in the second round when Oliveira busted open Griffin with this uppercut, and Griffin was just, painting a blood-stained mural over the canvas because he was a faucet with all of this blood coming out. They had to check him because it was over the right eye, but the fight continued. I had it even going into the third round, and the third I gave to Oliveira. So I had it 29-28. What did you think about this fight?
So I thought it was a great fight. I really like the way Cowboy fought in this fight. I actually gave it to him 29-28, but I gave him the first two rounds, and then the third round I really couldn't decide. The
third was equal because you had Oliveira take him down, and he briefly mounted him, and it was pretty much they split the round in two because Griffin then reversed him and got on top in half guard. And it was like they pretty much had the same position split into two halves of this round.
Yeah. So exactly. And so I didn't give Griffin any rounds because I couldn't give him the last round, and I don't necessarily give Oliveira that round, but I did give Oliveira the first round because I thought he was really effective at range. He was just good at keeping distance, and his strikes looked like he was doing a good job at pushing him back at times, despite Griffin, pressing forward. And, it was a fun fight. Oliveira, I thought, fought a really smart fight and, a lot more controlled than he has in the past.
Let's go on to the prelims. And this was, a really big fight for Sean O'Malley. He has not fought since March of 2018. He has had several USADA issues after they found Austrian in his system, and then seemed to have that same kind of pulsing deal where it was showing back up in his system. So he ended up missing 2 years in total, and he was taking on Jose Quinones, and O'Malley instantly, you're watching his footwork, his speed. He was just so composed in there with Quinones, and he's just attacking him with several strikes, but being very patient. And then Quinones came in and got tossed over to the fence, got hit with a head kick and then an uppercut that stunned him, and O'Malley just finished him with hammer fists at 2 minutes, 2 seconds of the first round. I thought a very, very impressive performance from Sean O'Malley to make up for lost time after these 2 years he's been gone.
Yeah, I mean, he looked extremely polished and sharp. I mean, it was pretty easy for him. Like, he managed the distance perfectly. Almost everything he threw, he connected with. Yeah, it was very sharp. And I think it's, you probably want to get him back in there. He didn't take any injuries. He's been off a long time. He probably wants to make some money. You can put him on the top of a fight night, or you can put him as a nice juicy piece of another pay-per-view.
Yeah, I could see him absolutely at this point being able to headline a fight night card. I mean, he's, to me, had a lot of momentum behind him before the USADA issues, and also a guy that kept very busy over the last couple of months. He's been doing those quintet grappling events where he's done matches with Takanori Gomi, Hector Lombard, and Gilbert Melendez. So, I mean, on the grappling front, that's a pretty impressive lineup of opponents.
Yeah, I mean, he's going in there with UFC, level fighters. So that's terrific experience. And, we were talking about it, 2 years off, getting the ability to sharpen your skills without putting any miles on the vehicle is potentially something really valuable.
Then we had, Olympic silver medalist Mark O. Madsen versus Austin Hubbard. We had 2 Olympic silver medalists on this card, with Madsen and Yoel Romero. Now, these two are 7 years apart, but what's crazy is that Romero won his silver medal 16 years before Madsen did.
I mean, don't talk about age and Romero and anything that makes sense, okay? It's like he's like in another dimension, a vortex, like where he's able to move through space and time differently than everybody else. You know what it is? It's like, they say when things like, if two things travel, like twins, they're the same age, but one goes on a rocket ship traveling at the speed of light around the Earth and comes back, the other twin will have aged more. It's like Yoel Romero is traveling in a ship at the speed of light because he's not aging and we're all getting older.
This guy's silver medal he won was 20 years ago, and he just headlined a pay-per-view tonight. That's madness. Imagine someone in wrestling winning a silver medal this summer in Tokyo, providing these games occur, and then they headline a UFC pay-per-view in 2040.
Against Yoel Romero.
Oh, wow. You were on top of that one. That was very good. I was very impressed. Marco Madsen did not have he utilized his wrestling here. And I think that if you've watched enough of Mark O. Madsen here, he has developed his game beyond just relying on his wrestling skill. But that is his bread and butter here. And he was able to hit this belly to back suplex that Daniel Cormier was in awe of watching him here. Madsen won the first 2 rounds, and then in the third, Austin Hubbard knew he was down on the scorecards, and he just kind of went for it, and he had a lot of success. Whether it was Madsen just tiring in the third or just not being able to deal with the pressure, Hubbard was able to drill him with this knee, and that was something Madsen was susceptible to throughout this round, was this knee strike, and also took an uppercut here. So I had Hubbard winning the third round, but not enough to win the fight. So I scored it 29-28 for Mark O. Madsen, and they're making a big deal out of his middle initial here.
Yeah. It almost sounds like Irish or something, but
he's the man on a mission, Mark O. Madsen.
But I was impressed with the performance. Used his, it's kind of Damian Maia-esque. He used his grappling to control the opening rounds and then survived the inevitable last second barrage from his desperate opponent. And, he took a lot of shots. And he didn't just use the wrestling. He used strikes to get in there. He answered shots. Like, he made it a point that when he took a shot, he'd fire back, even if, it wasn't always the smartest move. And it's the type of fight, they say you learn the most from your losses. Like, it's sort of like the closest thing to that. I think there's a lot that he can be proud of, but clearly a lot of things that need to be worked on. And, he gave a great, post-fight interview. Like, this guy, so he seems to have like a really good head on his shoulder. And, I look forward to seeing him progress against, slowly against higher ranked opponents, but can't be too slowly because he's up there in age, right?
Well, that's what I was going to point out. I know we just talked about Yoel Romero, but Yoel Romero is a freak, and Madsen is 35 years old. So you're talking about, this is late in the game for him to be, developing at the time he is going to need. So it's, it'll be interesting to see what his trajectory is and what kind of, run he can have here in the UFC. Cause he certainly has the tools, but, if this guy was like 8 or 9 years younger, he would certainly be a highly, highly touted, prospect.
Yeah. I mean, this is welterweight, right? I'm not credentialed.
Lightweight.
Oh, lightweight. Okay. He would be interesting against Khabib, right? Like that credentialed of a Greco guy,
I don't know if that fight happens today.
Obviously it's MMA. I'm not saying, as somebody who can challenge, no one's been able to challenge the grappling of Khabib is all I'm saying. And this guy's a, Olympian. So it's like the ultimate grappling challenge.
And we had like the spillover from the press conference. I mean, this was a pretty star-studded, crowd. We had Robert Downey Jr. front and center. Khabib was there.
I was kind of
Walid
surprised.
Ismail was there with Paulo Costa. I mean, it was, man. It was a celebrity sellout.
I was surprised to actually see so many celebrities with, the concern around gatherings and such.
Do you think that has the potential to be, certainly like the one that I'm looking at is WrestleMania weekend in a couple of weeks, the WWE has said, we're moving forward with everything, but I don't know how you can make, you can't guarantee anything right now.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I think, they say they're moving forward. That gives the people who bought the tickets and arranged the travels confidence. This is a fluid situation that you need to be on top of, and we're relying on, our officials to make the best decisions and inform us about it. And, so that's who I'm more worried about making decisions, not so much these organizations,
Yeah, absolutely. Rodolfo Vieira, this guy, among grapplers to come into the UFC, this guy is one of the most credentialed, a multiple-time world champion at Abu Dhabi, the Pan Ams. He's 30 years old. This is his second UFC fight after defeating Oscar Pihota, and he was taking on Saperbek Safarov. And Safarov got, I guess, a moral victory here because he did land this brutal front kick to the eye of Vieira that shut his left eye completely. But Vieira just ate the kick and then took him down and just pretty much played with his food here. He just took his time, got his hooks in, and then mounted poor Safarov and eventually moved to an arm triangle and just squeezed. And Safarov tapped at 2:58 of the first round. Doesn't come out of it unscathed, but Vieira is the real deal here.
Absolutely. I mean, we are talking about the absolute highest level of grappler that there is, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, I should say. Like if you just go through his record, anybody familiar with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will just see a who's who list of legends that he's defeated, some that he's submitted. So he has a ton of potential to achieve great things.
Gerald Meerschaert and Vieira and Winn was next. Vieira and Winn, this was a guy that was fighting at light heavyweight. He was on that one and only Golden Boy MMA card against Tom Lawler, won that fight, got signed by the UFC, and then came down to middleweight, and in his last fight, missed weight against Darren Stewart, and then lost the fight. And he made weight for this one, and he's taking on Gerald Meerschaert, who looked like he was in a different weight class. They looked like two completely different weight classes in here. However, as we just mentioned, like, Vieira and Winn has had trouble in the past making middleweight. So the announcers are even talking about it, about Winn perhaps, belongs at welterweight. And of course, what made this interesting is that his training partner is Daniel Cormier, who is on the broadcast. So it gave you some unique insight here to Cormier calling Winn's fight. However, they split the first two rounds, I thought, and then in the third round, Winn blasts him with a right, and then Meerschaert comes back, hurts Winn, and starts attacking him with shots, and goes for the guillotine before taking his back and locks in a rear naked choke. And it just seemed like Winn was realized he was caught here, tapped out at 2:13 of the third round. So it's a weird state for Vieira and Winn. It seems like he is in a weight class too high for his stature at 5'6", but I mean, he's going to have to make some big changes, I guess, in his, just his overall training and diet if he can even think of making welterweight, because it seems like it's quite the task just getting to middleweight.
Yeah, it's a really unfortunate situation. I mean, he's constantly been compared to his, coach and, Daniel Cormier, and he fights in a similar style and he has success in similar ways, but he lacks the volume to really make it effective. Like he's able to get inside and land strikes that really hurt Meerschaert in this fight. But it's just not enough volume, and he doesn't keep the pressure on. And the body shots in the second round really did him in, because then by the third he had nothing left. And, he's got to go back to the drawing board, rethink what he wants to do with his career. He does look really undersized at middleweight, and,
again, he was fighting at light heavyweight. It was crazy to watch. 5'6" at light heavyweight.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's hard to imagine, because I'm 5'6". I think my license says 5'7", and I'm like 155 pounds. So it's to imagine that all that mass in like the same size body. It's kind of difficult.
I think he's just got to walk away from this and realize, okay, I've got to make major changes, because you can see the skill level there. Like, this is someone that I think you would want to invest that time in, because he's 30 years old. He's got, plenty of good years ahead of him. And I think those, that quality should be at a lower weight class, because you're taking on monsters here, like a Gerald Meerschaert that is just, this is just not going to be the weight class for you. So I would take the requisite time, put it in, and it's going to pay you back exponentially if you can figure out a healthy way to get down, which I feel on this frame he can get to, not being an expert myself.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. But neither of us are the nutrition experts.
And then the Fight Pass fights, they were supposed to have 3 fights, but Emily Whitmire, she missed weight on Friday. She came in a pound and a half over for her fight, her strawweight fight with Polyana Viana. And then on Saturday, they announced that due to a medical issue, she had to withdraw from the fight, so that got scrapped. We had 2 fights. Starting off with Dana Bakari from Mongolia, who knocked out Guido Canetti 3 minutes, 1 second of the first round. This occurred when Dana drilled him with a left hook and just dropped him and finished him with ground and pound. First round finish, and we were off with a pretty impressive stoppage here.
Yeah, he looked really good, very sharp. Daniel Cormier, who was on the broadcast, as we've mentioned several times, was pinpoint all night, as he usually is, but he did a great job of illustrating not just, the striking, but the head movement as well while the strikes were happening. And so, yeah, let's line him up for another one. See what else he can do.
And the featherweight fight, the final fight here on Fight Pass, was Giga Chikadze defeating Jamal Emmers by split decision, 29-28 scores in his favor. I thought Chikadze won the first 2 rounds, although if you were listening to Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier, they seemed very high on Jamal Emmers winning this second round, that he got a takedown and Chikadze just got up right after. Like he reversed him. He reversed and got on top. And to me, he tagged him and wobbled Emmers in the second round. So I thought it was pretty clear for Chikadze in these first 2 rounds. Although I did give the third round to Jamal Emmers here, where he just chipped away with his jabs and then got a takedown near the end, landing some hammer fists. But Chikadze gets the split decision nod.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree, John, because I thought Emmers won this fight. I thought he won the second round because that round he gained control of the fight. He got in the flow and he started to stick and move and evade most of Chikadze's shots, which he did land a few in the early part of the round, but the momentum completely shifted and it was just a complete travesty that I am absolutely furious about. And if I was Jamal Emmers, I would protest.
Get out of here. How about the momentum in his legs when he got wobbled in that second round? What about that? It was reverberating, I think, all the way to Los Angeles afterwards.
I don't know what to tell you, John. We saw different fights.
Well, that was UFC 248. I would say our early contender for fight of the year and card of the year. I really enjoyed this show. Even the last fight, I didn't hate it. I was like, given just the stakes that were involved, and it was, how is this fight going to be scored? I think there was a compelling nature to it, but certainly not one that you're going to be reminiscing about at the end of the year on any best of lists.
No, I mean, if, everybody thinks, we're about to have the Israel Adesanya coming out party where he becomes a megastar all of a sudden. Well, this certainly wasn't going to be that. So, we'll see. Maybe the next one, Paulo Costa, it promises to be, fireworks. But we shall see.
Adesanya seems to have this weird pattern that he'll have like these breakout performances and he is the next superstar. And then he'll have other ones where, much like against Anderson Silva last year, tonight, where, it's not the most explosive fight in the world. And suddenly people are, I don't know, maybe it's getting ahead of ourselves to say people are pumping the brakes, but that seemed to be, more of a negative sentiment on Adesanya tonight. And I think it was just ultimately, 2 fighters that it was like, they really did not, mesh well tonight. It was, Romero was hardly engaging during a significant portion of that fight. I think more of the onus was on Yoel Romero in that fight, not really living up to people's expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think you, at the very least, have to make the point that the challenger has to win. The champion doesn't have to win, right? The champion is a draw is sufficient to retain your title.
Correct. Yes.
So it's like 50+1, and Romero didn't give the +1. I thought.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like whether you scored it, 3-2 Romero or 3-2 for Adesanya, no side has any right to be upset about the decision. Like, to me, of the two fighters, that just, to me, they left those rounds for the taking to be interpreted in either direction on too many rounds in that fight. So that's not one to me that any side can cry travesty about, because it was just, you let, like, a first round like that, how can you possibly say with any conviction, who won some of these rounds?
I can't. I can say it with no conviction whatsoever.
I always look for your conviction. Before we get on out of here, next week, they have a card in Brazil that's headlined by Kevin Lee and Charles Oliveira, but the one I feel you're eyeing is Demian Maia versus Gilbert Burns. Yeah,
I am eyeing that. I mean, there's actually quite a few good fights on this
is a sneaky good card next week. This one in Brazil. Renato Moicano versus Damir Hadzovic. Johnny Walker is fighting Nikita Krylov. Johnny Walker's fights are always insane. John McDessie, Francisco Trinaldo, Jussier Formiga against Brendan Moreno.
Yeah, that's a huge fight, especially considering what we saw last weekend. And yeah, Demian Maia versus Gilbert Burns. I mean, this continues the tour of them just trying to assassinate Demian Maia with the next young stud. And we'll see if he figures out a way to backpack him for 3 rounds or 2.5 or whatever he needs to do to get the W. But Gilbert Burns has looked amazing. And, this is serious business for Maia here. And he's a legit, jiu-jitsu, champion himself, right? So, yeah.
Main event, Charles Oliveira, he's won 6 in a row. Kevin Lee is coming off that brutal knockout, over Gregor Gillespie. So that's a really good main event as well at 155 pounds.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oliveira's been on a tear. He's deserved a quality opponent for a while. And, this should be pretty exciting. And Kevin Lee, right? He puts this win and maybe one more together, and he's right up there in the top of the division.
Okay. Quick picks of these main events that are coming up. Tyron Woodley versus Leon Edwards. Your pick.
Leon Edwards.
The following weekend, Francis Ngannou, Jairzinho Rozenstruik.
Ngannou.
Alistair Overeem versus Walt Harris on April 11th.
Walt Harris.
That could be another vicious knockout for Alistair Overeem, which those are piling up. So we'll see what Alistair Overeem we see in this one. And then the next time you and I will be chatting for one of these, April 18th, UFC 249. The prediction I want is who will be stepping in to replace either Khabib Nurmagomedov or Tony Ferguson in the main event. Which lightweight do you see them calling upon to save the main event?
So I honestly, I don't see that as realistically. No, that is realistic that that has to happen. I would say though that it's more likely that the fight gets canceled for other reasons,
That was brought up at the press conference. Did you see that wild press conference on Friday?
Yes, I did. A few years ago, I couldn't miss a UFC press conference, and now I catch them few and far between. But I did happen to catch that one, and it was entertaining.
If you missed it, here's the recap. Tony Ferguson showed up wearing gloves and was carrying a baseball, like a hard ball. And when he was asked about this, he said he's the hitman and he's coming to kill someone. And then they asked, what about the baseball in case they run?
Yeah, see, I think people maybe didn't realize he was this character from a video game.
Is this from a video game? This is certainly
this is what I'm pretty
scope.
Sure. I'm not super familiar with this video game, but I'm pretty sure that's what he had dressed up as, and he maybe even said something so I think that's what it was. He was this hitman character, and yeah.
Well, that card has that in the main event, which knock on wood will happen this time around. It is the probably one of the most anticipated fights in UFC history after all the misses of this fight to try and put it together. Jessica Andrade against Rose Namajunas in a rematch from the fight where Namajunas lost her title to Andrade, which was a fight that Namajunas in that first round was among the best rounds she's ever had, and then got just stopped in the second round. Jeremy Stevens versus Kelvin Kattar. Shamil Abdurrahimov, well, that's against TBD. Jacare's on this card against Uriah Hall.
Is that back at 185 then?
That's at 185, yeah. Ben Rothwell's on this card against Jean Vellante. So
Jean Vellante at heavyweight then, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. So his last fight was at heavyweight.
Yeah, watching some of the wars that guy's had at 205 pounds, I don't know if my decision is, you know what I need? Bigger guys. these rock'em sock'em fights, the punches could be way more damaging. So,
yeah.
That is the career move for one Jean Vellante. Well, Phil, thank you very much for joining me. It is all of a sudden it's almost 4 a.m. So thank you so much. It was only 1:45 when we started this.
Well, it flew by. It only felt like an hour then. So, but it's been 2. So.
Can we just say that, as we have continued to do these shows month after month, I mean, we talk about Yoel Romero conserving his energy and having cardio late. Like, your conditioning for these shows, there was a time that you were just dead by this point, and now I feel like you could go through the whole Invicta card from Friday with me.
Why don't we do that then? Let's do that, John. That sounds like what the fans tune in for.
I actually watched most of that card. I was very curious to see how the open scoring would work.
Oh, okay. And how did it work?
Well, first of all, they were doing a one-night tournament. So the first 8 fights are all one-round fights. So they had no use of the open scoring until fight number 9. And it was done. It really had no effect on the fight because it was, the 2 fights I saw where they utilized it, it was pretty clear cut, and they would show them to the corner, but not to the fighter. So the corner got to decide, do we tell the fighter if they're up or not? So you could see it at home. The broadcasters acknowledged it and the corner could see it, but the fighter, they had to rely on their corner to relay the information if they wanted, and they never really made it clear if they were even passing the information on. I kind of like seeing the score, but it's, yeah, I don't know how many other places are going to adopt it.
Well,
tonight would have been interesting in that Romero and Adesanya fight. It would have been really interesting to see, if Romero knew that he was down on 2 judges' scorecards going into, or if it was tied on 2 judges' scorecards going into the 5th round, would he have pressed harder? I mean, that's where you could. For all the arguments I see about people thinking, there's going to be a fighter that coasts in the 3rd round. I look at that Austin Hubbard fight tonight with Mark Madsen. That guy knew he was down 2 rounds, and we got the most entertaining round of the 3 when he knew he was down and just brought it to Madsen.
Yeah, I mean that's right. Gamesmanship is already happening right now.
I'm not saying I'm pro or anti open scoring because I've heard arguments for both, and I do think it does create some potential problems. But the argument that it's going to lead to fights that, guys are just going to coast and that's going to ruin fights, I think it's offset by fighters that are going to know they're down 2 rounds, and especially in UFC where you have that win bonus dangling, are going to be that much more aggressive in the 3rd. And I think it's going to negate anyone, coasting in the 3rd round.
Yeah. Look, let's keep trying it and tweaking it. But, as we've sort of mentioned, the scoring itself is not ideal. The judging is less than ideal, especially in Texas. And, yeah.
And they're going back to Texas tonight. They announced they're going back there at the end of June. So they gave us a several month warning.
Cormier wasn't too pleased either, right? Did you hear that?
He said, Texas is in the corner having a timeout right now.
That's right. Well, that's what we thought, but apparently not.
Yeah, they're going to Austin at the end of June. Well, Phil, thank you so much.
There's no South by Southwest in June. No, that's this month though, right?
That's coming up very soon. Yeah. Isn't that was going to be next weekend?
Yes, it was. Crazy.
Phil, thank you as always for joining me. You can of course catch Phil every week at postwrestling.com with 5 questions. This week adorned by a photo of Juggernaut. Did you like that one?
I did. I was hoping you would use that. I mean, does he not, like, it's, you know what I'm saying?
I had that image in my head throughout the whole fight because of you. Anything else you want to promote, Phil? I know you have a project in the works, but are we at promoting it yet? Or are we not at that stage yet?
Well, actually, John, I'm happy to announce that, as you mentioned, a project I've been working on for a while, and thanks to you, I have started my own podcast. It is not necessarily martial arts or wrestling related. I guess it's sort of society and culture. I'm going to talk about a variety of things. It's available now anywhere you get podcasts, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. And my first guest is someone that you know, John, is Dr. Christian Rizea. Dr. Christian Rizea.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he's a clinical psychologist, a hypnotherapist, and a relationship coach. And so we sort of I catch up with him, and we go through his career and some of the work he's doing. And that's the first of I'm going to talk to people about business, technology, politics, science, hopefully. And I'm also going to do a sort of local spin on things, York region and GTA, and just talk about stuff I'm interested in.
What's the name of the podcast?
So it is the Fishbulb Podcast. So FISHBULB, as if a goldfish met a light bulb. I'm Fishbulb_CA on Twitter, and I'm gonna post something on social media in the next day or so. But it is available now if you want to go listen to the first episode. And John, you're always, of course, welcome to be a guest on the show.
I'd love to be on.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Boom. All right.
Guys, Phil is one of the smartest people I know. There's a reason I recruited him here. So,
God.
I mean, if you want to see him flex some muscle, I mean, the guy can talk about a lot more than just fighting. So, do check out the Fishbulb Podcast. I'm gonna, I'm gonna go so far. I'm gonna subscribe to it because I've been a little annoyed at some of these podcasts I subscribe to because I'll wake up and they've downloaded the entire library of that. I had to get rid of Joe Rogan's show. There was I had it just stuck here, dude. 1,000+ episodes got downloaded onto my player here just out of nowhere.
That alone is like.
I had to literally scroll, and they're mixed with all my other ones, and you have to go one by one to delete them. It drove me insane, so I unsubscribed from it completely.
That's at least 6 hours of chimpanzee talk alone.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
So, that's how much I value, our friendship, Phil. I will subscribe to your podcast.
Wow.
Even once you get to 1,000 episodes and then you decide to just spam my phone.
So subscribing is more onerous than appearing as a guest.
Yes, yeah. I can do the guest spot in my sleep. That's no problem. We'll chat about, local politics. We can talk about, you just named the topic. I'm ready.
Well, it's the John Pollock success story.
How about,
I mean, ideally,
how about the Empress Walk stories? Can we do the Empress Walk Chronicles, you and I?
Do people want to hear about that?
No.
I'm not sure. This is right. Yeah. I'm not sure people are going to want to hear about anything else I want to talk about, but
you know what it guarantees you? It guarantees you a foundation because the people we talk about are the people that will download the podcast to listen about themselves.
Yes.
And you're easily in for like 15.
Well, I mean, John, I've already got one Empress, guest on my, resume, right?
That's true. Yes.
Yes. So now there'll be two. Now there'll be two.
You build up to the big season finale DaCosta podcast.
Oh my gosh. This is real inside baseball. You're just like so going into, okay. I Anyway, so yeah, we're going to talk about the John Pollock success story. Yeah.
Oh, the success story. We'll see about that. Phil, thank you as always, for joining me. Thank you to everybody for listening. Wei and I will be back Monday night with, Rewind to Raw. And if you want to go, we will be going to WrestleMania weekend, coming up. Well, providing nothing gets canceled. And we're doing our live show Sunday, April the 5th at noon Eastern at the Art Institute of Tampa. If you want to get all the information, postwrestling.com/live. We hope to see you there. Phil is booking the whole weekend off. He is flying down just to check out the Q&A. So
wait, when is WrestleMania weekend?
It is the first weekend of April.
Okay, I'm not booking that off.
No.
What am I supposed to be doing?
You know what?
Going to WrestleMania? Is that what you're suggesting?
Coming to our live show, but
I'd love to do that. I'd rather go to that than WrestleMania.
Well, I don't want to.
WrestleMania is longer than a UFC event, right?
It's comparable. Like tonight was probably longer than what WrestleMania will be, or at least right around the exact time.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm not trying to hate. Like, I think WrestleMania would be an awesome, fun experience. I would love to go to WrestleMania. I just don't want to go to that much WrestleMania. And, you know what I mean?
No. Phil might not make it to Tampa, but the one thing that I always look forward to is every year, Phil usually checks in on WrestleMania, and then I get the yearly Phil email. So maybe we can get the audio version.
Okay.
When we chat next after Ferguson Nurmagomedov, we can get whatever you catch of WrestleMania.
Okay. You know what? I'll make a point to note what day it's on, but because the last few years I really only caught very, very small bits. Like I saw Ronda, that one year I only saw Ronda. That was the entire experience.
Well, maybe try and watch the Shayna Baszler match. That can be
Shayna Baszler. Okay.
Shayna Baszler will be in she'll be in one of the featured matches.
Shayna Baszler. What's the main event? Is there a main event?
We've got Brock Lesnar against Drew McIntyre. And then
I don't know who Drew McIntyre is.
Okay. Well, we have on the SmackDown side, we have Roman Reigns and Bill Goldberg.
Okay. I know Bill. Okay. All right.
So look forward to that, everybody. On our UFC 249 post show, we'll get WrestleMania thoughts from Phil.
Maybe, you know what I'll do? I'll go down. I'll look at the lineup. I'll cherry pick.
Cherry pick. Exactly.
Yeah, I'll cherry pick.
That's probably the best way to watch it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Go now and listen to the Fishball podcast.
Thanks, John.